It should not be controversial to oppose the killing of both Palestinian and Israeli children and civilians. It shouldn't be controversial to oppose war crimes. But when I went on Sky News this week to calmly and gently do just that, I was interrupted, heckled, and lied about, and my other guests did all they could to shut down any mention of Palestinian suffering. This is a case study of what's happening now when there's any attempt at all to affirm the humanity of the Palestinian people. Now, I'll share this clip, but for context, I was asked to go on Sky News last week before the Atrocity for Labour Party conference. It was only a few hours before the programme that was told that the Labour MP Margaret Hodge was on. I'm not saying this to have a go at Sky News. It's just, firstly, we should be elevating other voices at the moment, particularly Palestinian voices, and also, I think, for reasons which will become very evident when you watch this clip. Now, I'll post the whole clip for context so you'll see why.
Well, let's bring in our panel now, shall we? The former Minister, Senior Labour MP, Dame Margaret Hodge, and the author and Guardian columnist, Owen Jones. I mean, I don't even know where to start. I mean, the stories that are coming out, and we're learning more and more about this. It is heartbreaking. It is sickening, as President Biden was saying. Margaret, you were talking earlier before we went on air about how you visited the kibbutz recently, that we have seen some of these horrors emerging from.
Yeah, I've got a lump in my throat, Sophie, so I'm sorry about that, but I was at Kfar Aza in February. We spent a day there, and it's I spent the day with a third-generation kibbutznik, so the kibbutz has been there for ages, and as you walked the periphery of the kibbutz, you could hear the call to prayer from the Muslims on the Gaza side, and you did think, for goodness sake, why don't these two communities talk to each other? But what was so awful, it isn't a rich kibbutz. It sort of felt to me like an inner council estate. The housing wasn't very well off. They made their money from a plastics factory, and every home had a covering. So, because they were used to bombs, they had a minute to get to the shelters, and the covering was supposed to protect their homes. Now, what is so awful is the people I've travelled with had been in touch with the woman who showed us around, spent the day with us and showed us around, and she's been WhatsApping us. And what we now realise is that probably the WhatsApps that came back weren't from her, they were from Hamas. And the idea that 40 babies were killed there, some of them beheaded, that homes were ruined, that adults were killed. We don't know how many are left of the people that we met there. It's just beyond horrible. And what is worse about it is I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I just, I haven't got relatives and friends there, but, obviously as a part of the Jewish community, everybody I talk to has got somebody they know there, a cousin, brother-in-law, a brother or sister, somebody is there. And this absolutely horrific bit of terrorism is condemned. Well, I condemn it. I stand by Israel. I was proud today that there was a standing ovation when Keir said he stands by Israel. And Israel has got the right to defend itself. I hope they do that within the rule of law. And what is particularly depressing for me, having been there in February, I think this has pushed back for years, if not decades, the idea that we can never come to a peaceful solution. It's pushed the agenda back. The terrorists have managed that. They're out, maybe that's what they wanted, but it's pushed that agenda into the background rather than bringing it forward.
Thank you for, I know it must be really difficult after you've been there, you've met some of the people who are living there, and so thank you for sharing, your experiences of it. It does bring it to life, what some of those horrors are that we've seen. Do you share that fear that things are going to get worse before they get better?
Yes, of course, and obviously, firstly, it's so important to share the disgust and horror at what happened. I was at a rave on Saturday with my friend who's an Israeli citizen, and I was with him as he took a call from his family. His niece escaped that rave. Two of her friends were kidnapped and are now being held hostage by Hamas. There's no cause on earth which justifies the slaughter of innocent civilians, and the horror and disgust is raw with so many people, and the anguish of what those left behind are going for is indescribable. Obviously, my concern about what happens next is partly informed by what's happened before. When we talk about how Israel responds, already the Israeli government, which is a far-right government, have made clear that they will institute a policy of collective punishment. The defence minister said, I've ordered a complete siege in the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals and we act accordingly. That is the language of war crimes. It is illegal under international law to impose collective punishment on a people. 80%. I've let you speak. So you're going to respond. 80% of those who live in Gaza, which is an open-air prison, depend on humanitarian aid.
But you're not acknowledging, Owen. You're not acknowledging,
50%,
Owen.
Margaret, I've let you speak at great length.
I tell you what I can't stand is that you're using the horrors that we've experienced in the last 3 days to bang the drum about an issue that you've been banging the drum on forever.
No, I'm not.
And what I think you should really think about is how the people of Israel who have now been there for, have nowhere else to go.
Margaret,
they have nowhere else to go.
Is it possible for me to respond? Right now, Palestinian children whose life is as sacred as a child in Israel are being slaughtered. They are dying, okay? Now, 50% of the... Please let me finish.
I'll let you come in.
50% of the population of the Gaza Strip are children. And those children are being bombed by a government which has said that we are fighting human animals and we act accordingly. Benjamin Netanyahu demanded the civilians of Gaza Strip leave. You cannot leave the Gaza Strip. It is under blockade by air, sea and land. Now, 96%... Please let me finish.
Yeah, I will, but...
96%, because Margaret spoke at length, 96% of those who have died in the last 15 years are Palestinians. And we cannot talk about what's happened because, when I spoke to my Israeli friend who took that call, for him, what he wants is this to never happen again. And that context for him was so important because unless there is a lasting peace, which does mean ending the occupation and a policy of apartheid and ending the murder of Palestinian civilians, then this will never end.
Margaret.
Well, all I would say is that Owen is completely and utterly ignoring what has happened over the last few days.
I didn't ignore.
You have ignored all.
Owen, just wait.
All you've talked about, Owen, is your obsession, the obsession with so many people around the issue around Palestine. It's been an obsession forever. And you should just think at the moment, if you were an Israeli sitting there, if you'd had family, I mean, here I am, I'm sitting here, and the people I visited, probably, I don't know how many of them are still alive. Are you saying they have no right to defend themselves? Are you saying they have no right to be... All you have argued is how... I've never supported the Netanyahu government. No. I've always been critical of that. But at this moment in time, this is the most horrific... This is the most horrific occasion and you should... you condemn it. Do you even condemn it?
I just opened in the strongest possible terms condemning the atrocity.
But you don't think they have the right...
I don't believe a military solution...
You don't think they have a right to defend their state of Israel?
The military solutions that have been pursued against the Gaza Strip have led to huge bloodshed.
You don't think they have the right to defend themselves?
I think a military attack on Gaza will lead to countless dead Israeli soldiers and huge numbers of civilians.
They should allow the hostages to die.
And I have to say, Margaret, when you said, it's very difficult to have a conversation if you just speak over each other. I don't think it's that nice to watch.
Because you make me really angry because you're using this horror.
No, Margaret,
I'm going to come in. I am actually going to come in, OK?
Right.
I'm going to come in.
Sorry.
Thank you, both of you, for speaking. No.
We have to talk about the Palestinians being killed now. That's the point. That's not an obsession with the issue. I get that. But to say it's an obsession with Palestine when we're talking about Palestinian civilians who are being killed right now.
Thank you very much for coming on the programme and having the debate. I utterly accept that with babies, children dying, it's...
Both. And they both matter the same.
With babies and children...
to say that controversial is...
I think it's pretty clear that with babies and children dying, emotions are running extremely high, and I actually think that this just demonstrates this, the emotion that people are feeling, the anger that people are feeling now.
What do you even say here? What do you even say? Now, a few things here, and I'm not saying this because I'm some sort of victim. Really important to talk about that in that context. It's not about me. This is about what happens to any attempt to affirm the basic humanity of the Palestinian people right now. Notice how I listened at the beginning there in total respectful silence when Margaret Hodge spoke. Notice how I spoke at length in condemnation about the sickening atrocity unleashed by Hamas. Notice how Margaret Hodge immediately interrupts any attempt to talk about the killing of Palestinian civilians, or indeed any discussion whatsoever about Palestinian suffering. Notice how Margaret Hodge frames any discussion of Palestinian people as arising from some sort of weird obsession people like me have with Palestine, even though the killing of Palestinian civilians is happening right now as you listen to me speak. Notice how Margaret Hodge then lies, flagrantly lies, by claiming I never condemned the horror Hamas was responsible for. I don't say lying flippantly. I just do not understand how it's possible to listen to what I said and then conclude at the end that I hadn't condemned Hamas. How's that even possible? Absolutely incredible, wild behaviour. Now, right now, there is a systematic attempt to shut down the truth about what's happening to the Palestinian people. That we can't talk about the brutal consequences of occupation, of the siege of Gaza, of the apartheid described by multiple human rights groups, including in Israel itself, or the huge Palestinian death toll that predated what's happened in this current horror show, or the mass murder of Palestinians right now. Well, that's what makes it even more important. That's what makes it important for us to shout louder, to not be drowned out, and to never, ever, ever stop fighting for the only just settlement which will offer peace and security to Arabs and Jews alike, which is what we should all be fighting for, and that's an end to the occupation of Palestine and a Palestine that is free. Please like and subscribe. Do share the video. You can support the channel as ever on patreon.com/OwenJones84 and listen to us on the podcast. I'll speak to you soon.